Hello everyone, I'm Kroof and welcome to the Should You Play series, the series where I play games so you don't have to. For the first episode, I'll be covering Guild Wars 2. Now in this video and series to come, I'll be giving a overview/review of the game to better help individuals choose if they want to pick up this game, try it out, and or recommend it to a friend. So with this groundwork laid, let's jump into the video. The events of Guild Wars 2 takes place 250 years after the events of the first game, known as Guild Wars. Since the passage of 250 years, powerful entities known as Elder Dragons rose from their slumber. The world of Tyria, once home to racial warfare and menial strife, is now the home of powerful creatures capable of obliterating Tyria asunder. In the face of impending doom, 5 races of Tyria band together in hopes of preventing destruction and returning balance to their world. The question is, are they enough? The 5 allied races are composed of the humans, creatures obsessed with political standing and materialism. They are more than willing to defend their homeland. The Char, beasts forged in war. They focus on handling conflict with brute force. The Norn, warriors of honor and dignity. Their deep connection with the spirits of the wild lead them to greatness. The Asura, beings of small size but superior intellect and wit. Their understanding of the arcane allows Tyria to function with ease. The Sylvari, a new mysterious race. Their connection to nature grants them a childlike innocence. However, they are no stranger to combat. The primary action of Guild Wars 2 is sculpted and defined by the certain class or profession the individual chooses. Like in many other MMOs, there are 3 heavy armor professions, 3 medium armor professions, and 3 light armor professions. Let's take a closer look at each of the professions. For the heavy armor, we have the warrior. Warriors are skilled combatants who hold a wide variety of weapons in their arsenal. Warriors are no strangers to getting up close and personal with their enemy, as they can take quite a hefty beating. Guardians, mystical fighters who meld magic and metal. They excel at supporting their allies, mending others' wounds, and providing defensive buffs to fortify them in combat. Revenants, ghastly combatants who have the unique ability of channeling heroes of Tyria's past. Being exclusive to the Hearthorn's expansion, the Revenant gives the player a unique and modern twist on Guild Wars 2 combat. Rangers, masters of long-ranged weaponry and survival skills. Rangers have the added benefit of having an animal companion by their side, always ready to strike at their call. Thieves, stealthy assassins who linger in the shadows. Be it a bullet or a blade, and they'll get the job done. Engineers, inventors of lethal devices. They're always at the ready to pull something out of their toolbox. Necromancers, scholars of the unknown, the taboo, the wicked. Using their dark arts and mastery of death, they'll ravage and decay their enemy. Elementalists, mages of raw and destructive power, capable of manipulating fire to scorch their enemies, water to mend their allies, air to control the battlefield, or earth to bolster their own defenses. Mesmers, masters of manipulative magic. They cast their own reality on the battlefield to benefit them and their allies. Once the individual chooses their race and profession and goes through their character customization process, they'll begin their personal story. Now, when you first log in, you'll be in an instance, and this sets up the main events of the early game. The events in this section will slightly taper off and become less and less important as you move on to more grand events. But for the early game, it is fairly entertaining. You'll start with a very cinematic boss fight, learning a few of the mechanics, dodging, attacking, learning to view telegraphs of enemies. And once you are completed with this first instance of the story, you will go on to your first starting zone. Here, you will go around and explore, and I can't emphasize that enough for new players. If you come from a more traditional MMO, You might start thinking about the quest and the quest chains, but in Guild Wars 2, its main and, in my personal opinion, most unique and fun feature for leveling is its emphasis on exploration and just doing events and dynamic events. Dynamic events are events that will chain and change some aspect of the open world. Now, for leveling, I would recommend newer players to take your time, explore, take in the art, take in the enemies, learn your class. Take the time to read skills as they come up, and perhaps think of certain ways that you can combo certain skills, like I'm going to use this skill first and then move on to that skill. Now, this advice can be pretty much applied to any game or any MMO, but for Guild Wars 2, I think it is especially important, as I found my overall leveling experience to be much more enjoyable when I lowered the gas a little bit, took a step back, and just played the game for what it was. As a helpful tip, there is a scouting system in Guild Wars 2, or rather just scouts. These are NPCs that will guide you in a set direction. You in no means have to follow that direction, but they will simply point out certain things that you'd like to take a look at in order to level, and where certain events might be circulating around. And I found these to be very useful when I was first beginning, but as you get to be more accustomed to the game, how it runs and how it generally works, you might not need the scouts as often, but that is, of course, a personal call. I will finally say that the leveling was very enjoyable for me, and coming from someone who's played many MMOs, I have found that Guild Wars 2 has been the leveling system that I most enjoy, and I do not ever feel down that I have to level a character. I rather feel excited. Once players accumulate enough levels, they'll begin to experience mid to late game. Now, this is where you start to enter dungeons. Now, coming from other MMOs, you might be, oh, isn't that more so end game? Well, in Guild Wars 2, dungeons are more related to the story and the narrative. And dungeons are not necessarily being expanded upon in endgame. However, there is a system similar to dungeons, but they're known as fractals. Now, for dungeons, when you're in the mid to late game bracket, it's mostly about story and progressing the story and certain branches of the story until you finally reach the final level. When you reach max level, which is level 80, you will fight the final boss and celebrate a little bit until you move on to other things in Guild Wars 2. And these other things are known as endgame. Now, if you are a free-to-play player for Guild Wars 2, you have about 2 options, I would say, for endgame PvE. If you own Heart of Thorns, you have 3 options. I'll first cover the free-to-play players first. So if you're a free-to-play player, you will have access to fractals. I had mentioned these before when I was talking about dungeons. Fractals are a system where 5 players get together and go through I'm going to use quote-unquote dungeon, which retells past events of Tyria. So in a way, they're basically dungeons, just with a different name. I know. It's a whole semantics thing. But your other option, I would say, is open world boss farming. There are plenty of open world bosses for you to take a stab at with a bunch of other players. And it gives you a nice way to communicate and have a social interaction and experience some pretty cinematic fights. Now, if you own Heart of Thorns and or Path of Fire, you have another option known as raiding. And raiding is a fairly common game type in other MMOs. This is where you get together with a larger group of people, and in Guild Wars 2, the larger group is 10. So you get with 10 players, and you will go through very challenging boss encounters for the hope of getting really nice rewards. Now, if you happen to be a free-to-play player and you would like to raid and you are upset, I completely understand, but I would encourage you to stick with the base game a little bit, get to know the class, and to see if you actually really enjoy Guild Wars 2. And from there, you might be able to make a decision whether or not if you'd like to buy the expansions, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, or just buy Heart of Thorns and or Path of Fire. Now, for those of you who like to bash other players' characters' faces in, let's keep it in the virtual world. We have normal PvP conquest and world versus world options for you guys. For conquest, it is your fairly traditional point capture game mode where you will be joined with other players and fight it out in arenas. Your other option that is available to you, and this is, I might just say, available to free-to-play players as well, both Conquest PvP and World vs. World PvP, which I will touch on right now. World vs. World is a somewhat unique system. It is starting to be expanded upon in recent years, but it will pit 3 servers against each other in a battleground, and you will fight for domination. You will fight keeps, castles, trading stations, and see who becomes the best. Now, for the competitive scene aspect of Guild Wars 2, for Conquest PvP, I would say there is a stronger, more healthy competitive scene for Conquest. For World vs. World, I'm sad to report, but I'm not sure the community is as strong as per se Conquest. Now, this does not mean that World vs. World is stuck at this stage. There may come a time where more players, even new players, come in and start to organize more competitive scenes and get the community focused on World vs. World. I like to imagine and believe that the community will ultimately shape this game and how things are done and how new content is implemented. And I think if more people are interested in World vs. World and offer more ideas and more constructive ideas, the World vs. World scene will start on a path of renewing itself. Just to wrap this video up, I will now present a list of my pros and cons for Guild Wars 2, so you can answer the question, should I play Guild Wars 2? For the pros section, I have decided to put down a unique leveling experience, and I truly do believe that. I've had a lot of fun with leveling. A very strong and healthy community. With any community, there will always be toxicity, but I have found that Guild Wars 2 has a minimal level of toxicity. The class and character customization, I love to be able to customize my character very intricately, and I have found that Guild Wars 2 satisfies my needs for that. Furthermore, I love their PvE and PvP content. I think that the overall game, the player versus environment factor, is really satisfying, and so is the PvP aspect, even though I might have mentioned some flaws when I was talking about endgame PvP. There will always be flaws, but overall I think it is a very strong experience. And along with the normalities of games, we have the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack for the base Guild Wars 2 game, created and crafted by Jeremy Soule, is a true testament to musical artistry and Guild Wars 1. I really like it, especially I really enjoy Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, their soundtrack. I think it is so beautiful. I just can't. I like music too much. And finally, crafting and gathering. I'm not a huge crafting and gathering nut, but I have found that this system for crafting and gathering is palatable coming from someone who does not enjoy crafting or gathering. And for the con section, I have rating behind the Heart of Thorns expansion. I think being a PvE lover, it would definitely be a punch to the gut for me, but in a way I do understand the reason why. Now, the issue is balance frequency between classes. Among the community, there has been an outcry or dislike of the frequency of balance in the game. It happens every 4 months or so, something like that. But they have shown that they can do smaller balance patches. I'm not considering this to be a regular thing, but they have done it before. And finally, I have minor restrictions for free-to-play players, such as World vs. World unlocking at level 60, only having 2 character slots. But I think overall these are very manageable restrictions. These are definitely not horrid restrictions like I've seen in other MMOs. And finally, I have a very interesting topic: freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom of where to go. For some people it can be a con, and this is why I'm kind of putting it in parentheses. But for me, I really enjoy freedom. I like having that sense of I can do anything. I have options and where to go. Now, for some people, they would rather have their hand held a little bit, and I completely understand that. But that's why we have the good old community for help, and you can, of course, ask me questions down below in the comments if you have any. So those are my pros and con list. Hope you enjoyed those to get a little bit of a better decision. I just want to wrap up this video by saying I really would implore anybody interested to try it out. It is free to play. And New Year, ring in the new year with the new game if you have not tried it, or recommend it to a friend. I would like to say that I am partnered with ArenaNet, and I'm so grateful, and they give me motivation as well as all of you have motivation. But I wanted to say, just because I'm partnered, my partnership with ArenaNet has not swayed me in any of my criticisms in my con section, and I don't think it ever will. I would always true to myself and the game, and I tell it how it is most of the time when I'm not afraid to, because I think overall it's better for the health of the game. So keep that in mind. And one last thing, a little self-promotion. If you would like to buy Heart of Thorns and or Path of Fire, I have affiliate links down below to help directly support me, because I'm trudging along like everyone else in this world we call capitalism. But thank you everyone so much for watching. I am Kroof. Subscribe for more content, like the video if you liked it, and comment down below on other video games I should do for this series, because I actually am really interested in this series, and New Year resolution is definitely going to be more consistent. So yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye everyone. Mwah.